because you have these two conflicting feelings inside. It's like, I want to do all of these things, these big things. I have this organization and everything that I'm trying to do. And then with this Neptune transit comes in and it just kind of sort of sucks your brain out, and it kind of sucks your energy out. Sometimes it like deflates your balloon, and then you feel like, well, was I even supposed to be here? What am I doing? I'm not even a good fill in the blank of whatever it is for you. And aloha everybody, this is the Wild Wahine and I'm Kaylani, and this is a space where we like to talk about astrology and tarot and spirituality, self-care, and wellness. So this is my astro forecast. It's a forecast I do every week to kind of sort of tell everybody what the energy of the week is going to be, so they can use that information to make fantastic choices and organize their week, and they can kind of live stress-free, or as stress-free as possible. We never can really eliminate the stress now, can we? Especially now. But anyway, what we have going on for this week, which is the 10th through the 16th, is the energy of just a lot of mental energy and probably a lot of fogginess and confusion at the beginning of the week. And then we're going to kind of wrap up the week with a Mercury retrograde, which will at least help kind of ground it a little bit and let us know like where we're trudging into, which is actually kind of a revisit from where we came, because that's essentially what retrogrades are. And then we'll wrap up the week with some power struggly kind of things as we're kind of really trying to create something new in that Capricorn space, which is so lit up right now in our lives. We'll talk about that towards the end of the video. So we're starting off with the Sun in Capricorn sextiling Neptune in Pisces. This is going to be perfecting today, which is the 10th, and we're going to be feeling this energy all the way until the 14th or the 15th, depending upon obviously where you live in the world. So Sun in Capricorn is typically solar things, so things that have to do with ourselves, things that have to do with how we shine in the world, how we show up in the world, things that we see, where we're the boss, fame, how we're seen, and our warmth and our warm nature and all of those types of things is going to be sextiling Neptune. Neptune is a planet of kind of illusory things, imagination and spirituality, but also self-deception, places where we go to escape our lives at times. Since the Sun is sextiling Neptune in this particular transit, some of the things that are going to pop up will be like a very idealistic way of looking at things, kind of like a dreamer, rose-colored glasses kind of thing. Really good time for creativity or doing any kind of creative thing, even if you have something to do that's like a little bit more technical or a little bit more detailed. If you have a project that you're working on the creative aspect first, or the kind of imaginative aspect of that project before you get into the details, which would actually be better to do during the retrograde. If you can do that, that would be good for you to do. It could also be a really good time for service. So for those who are stepping up and helping others and serving others, it's going to be a time that should be really supportive of that if you're in any kind of service type industry. And you know, that can be doctors and lawyers and nurses, or people that care for the elderly, or hospice workers, or anybody that's kind of like, you know, just lending a helping hand. And it doesn't even have to be something you do as a profession. It could just be like what you're putting out in the world. If you just want to help people in general, you might feel that a little bit, that you want to do that. Or if you're already doing that, you might feel like a lot of support or energy towards that. So it's a really good time also too for like being deeply intuitive and really identifying with other people. Really, it's kind of like you're putting yourself in someone else's shoes and you know how they feel. And so you might feel like you are, you know, very close to people now. You can kind of pick up on energies and all of those types of things. Now, with this being said, trying to get shit done during a time where planets are aspecting Neptune is, well, it can be very challenging. Let's just say that. Neptune likes to dissolve boundaries. It likes to put us in a place where we're in an imaginative space, a space kind of like that movie Where Dreams May Come with Robin Williams. I don't know if you guys saw that. Again, like, you guys have had to see this. Like, seriously, like if I'm spoiling this, you have to stop the video, watch the movie, and come back. But it's a great movie. But essentially, like when you pass away, you kind of create this life for yourself. Heaven is essentially a place where you just create all of the things that you want, and you can be a different person, and you can fly, and you have all of these different possibilities that are really beautiful. Like, that's what it reminds me of. And that's kind of sort of what Neptune does. You see, it doesn't necessarily transform things. That's definitely much more of a Plutonian thing, but it definitely like it alters your perception of things. So if you're trying to like get concrete, very detail oriented things done during a Neptune transit, it's just rough. So if you've been feeling a little like mind cloudy, not able to be really focused, kind of like discombobulated, not very grounded, wanting to do more creative things, getting caught up on the gram or on TikTok and just watching video, like knowing I have, this is my to-do list, I gotta get this stuff done, but oh my gosh, look at this video, this is so cool, like that kind of stuff. That's what it's going to be like. So I think it's hard, you know, to sometimes to kind of get that stuff done when we have these type of transits. You can feel very distracted at this time. You can also feel like you want to escape, because that also is like a process of this. If you're going through a challenging time, or if you just like don't want to do all the stuff that you have to do, you're going to feel like you want to escape into something else, or escape and just not do it, escape into another person, escape into substances, escape into whatever, just absolute distractions that will keep you off your game and off what it is that you kind of want to do. So the key here, I think, with this particular type of energy is it's okay to escape, but just make sure you're escaping into things that are healthy and supportive for you. So self-care, you can escape to that. If you have like close friends and family or partners that are really supportive and loving, you know, spending, not that spending time with them is escapism, but you know, like spending more time with them or escaping with that, or playing games and having some, you know, fun and downtime, I think is always like a good thing. You just have to watch that you're not like going overboard with the escapist things that actually get you in trouble later, or that break your own personal rules. Because remember, Neptune is about dissolving the boundaries. So if you have all of these boundaries up and you're like, okay, this is the way that I want to structure things, this transit is going to make you question that and make you kind of like not necessarily be as good at holding up those boundaries, even when it's to yourself, because that's essentially, you know, what it is. When it's the sun, it is you. So it's like your own boundaries you may feel are dissolving a little bit. So next up we have Mars in Sagittarius squaring Neptune in Pisces. That's also exacting today on the 10th, going to be going all the way into the 14th to the 15th. And so both of these planets are in Jupiter's sign. We have Mars in Sagittarius, which is ruled by Jupiter, and we also have Neptune in Pisces, which is also ruled by Jupiter. So we have this square that's happening though, and squares are of the nature of Mars, so they can be like difficult or kind of challenging. You have to kind of work really hard to try to figure out how you're going to reach some type of equilibrium, and in both in Jupiter ruled signs. So things can be kind of large and they can feel like exhausting. It can definitely feel overwhelming at times, because you're dealing with like a lot of emotions, a lot of energy, a lot of imagination, a lot of, you know, whatever that is, because Jupiter has a tendency to make things excessive or make them big in its most extreme form. So I kind of sort of explain this as like Mars wants to do all the things and Neptune wants to dream about all of the things. And that in and of itself makes it challenging, because Mars likes to take action. It wants to do, it wants to engage, it wants to light the fire, it wants to go. And Neptune wants to relax, it wants to have quiet time, it wants to dream, it wants to think, it wants to create. It's much more intuitive and much more introverted in a lot of ways. So we have this really extroverted planet and this really introverted planet, and they kind of sort of in a lot of ways cancel each other out. All the plans that Mars had, even though they were plans on the whim, Neptune comes in and just dissolves all of them. It just totally takes away all of the bluff and the bravado. So what does that do in terms of like, how does that make you feel? Well, it makes you feel frustrated, because you wanted to go out there and you wanted to do things. You want to do things in a bold way, because that is Mars and Sagittarius. It wants to act, it wants to react, it wants to be big, it wants to hike, it wants to do physical things. And Neptune is like, I'd like to take a yin yoga class, or Neptune is like, I'd like to Netflix and chill. You know, it's that partner that wants to go hiking, and you know, this is my idea of a vacation. Like, we're hiking, we're like hanging out of a plane, like taking life and just like going with it, experiencing everything. And then the person that's like, I want a vacation and just lay on the beach most of the time. Like, I don't even want to take surf lessons. I just want to like get snorkeling gear and just relax, and like, you know, maybe like order in and just have a fully relaxing like tropical vacation and drink like Mai Tais. So these two energies very much clash, right? And so it's difficult to kind of sort of activate and get things done, because you have a desire to act on things, but then you don't really have like the energy to, because this transit also means like low energy. Your energy is not up to what it usually is, which makes it again difficult to actually do things. This can also be a time where people have a lot of self-doubt, where they're struggling with like imposter syndrome. Like, do I really belong here? Am I supposed to be here? Because you have these two conflicting feelings inside. It's like, I want to do all of these things, these big things. I have this organization and everything that I'm trying to do, and then with this Neptune transit comes in and it just kind of sort of sucks your brain out, and it kind of sucks your energy out. Sometimes it like deflates your balloon, and then you feel like, well, was I even supposed to be here? What am I doing? you know, I'm not even a good fill in the blank of whatever it is for you. And, you know, it can cause a lot of negative self-talk and you feeling really bad about yourself, you second guessing yourself and all of those things. Like, do I really deserve to be here? No, I don't. Everybody else is better, more qualified, more interesting, more whatever. And, you know, when you start talking to yourself like that, that can just make you feel worse. So that's why it can feel a little frustrating during this transit. Like I said, with the low energy, that's another thing. Sickness. I mean, obviously we know we have Miss Rona, you know, circulating. So lots of people are catching it and getting sick and so forth. You know, allergies can be activated at this time. You know, Pisces a lot of times does have to do with sickness, especially sickness of the watery areas. So that could be in the lungs, that could be in the blood, that could be poisoning. There's all kinds of things that happen when we have these, like, you know, kind of transits to Neptune and Pisces, especially now that Jupiter entered Pisces. So things are more expansive and they're kind of sort of going everywhere. So definitely, you know, that's here. I mean, we know it in the world is here. So, you know, more of that, or more it kind of sort of coming to a peak, you know, for sure during this time. Definitely kind of like see the trend in that. There's also a quality of feeling like just being petered out a bit. Like Mars isn't known to necessarily go the long distance anyway. Mars is in Sag, of course, so it's big burst of energy. Obviously, this is kind of connected to the transit before we talked about with the Sun in Capricorn, which actually is a little bit more of a steady kind of, you know, see it through a little bit more to completion just because, you know, Saturn is there. But with this particular transit, you just might feel petered out. You might just feel a little bit more tired, a little bit more exhausted, and just not feel like doing it, and might want to give up, you know. And so just know that you're kind of going through this transit. If you're feeling this way, it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. It doesn't mean that you can't get up and do things. What you want to try to do is lean into the things that actually feel better for you and that will allow you to really do the self-care that you need, because Neptune kind of is like a timeout for that. It's like a timeout for distraction. It's a timeout to scroll on your phone, because sometimes you're busy and you need to do that, and it's fun looking at TikTok videos because it makes you laugh because you have a very stressful job. So just know when these transits happen, it's not like we're living in a world where we can just be like, oh, you know, it's a Sun is aspecting Neptune, I can't perform this surgery anymore if you're a surgeon or something. Like, no, we still have to do things. We still have to like activate. We still have to focus on things. What's really important during these types of transits, I think, is for you to just, when you're off or on your breaks, instead of maybe like taking your break and eating and like chatting with your coworkers and so forth, maybe go to a more secluded place, a place where you can have some quiet time and put in your AirPods and like listen to some music and like, you know, try to see if you can get 5 minutes of meditation or something for yourself that's like feels good, something that's like more sensual oriented, whether you're like eating something that's delicious and seeing and taking a look at flowers or going outside for some fresh air. I mean, I know it's cool in a lot of places, but whatever that looks like to you, it could be a warm bath after your 12-hour shift. You know, that is super Neptunian. That's still like aligning yourself with the transit. So obviously we have to work, we obviously have to get things done, but we can still take that time for fun and downtime and distraction, because it's going to be here and it just might be a little bit more difficult. So if you can, you know, kind of like sneak those little things in during the day and during the week, it'll just make this transit a lot easier if you're really trying to get things done and you're feeling like completely discombobulated by this. Another funny meme about this, I had this meme that I posted a while back. It's a picture that I took on my phone when I was living in New York, and it said aggressive meditation here. And it had like a number, and I was like, what is that? What is aggressive meditation? Like, is that like, are you like aggressively meditating? You're like, still my mind, like, is that it? Or was it like I'm aggressively like trying to take my meditation practice seriously, or like you know, like I didn't know what that was. But it reminds me a little bit of this transit with Mars and Neptune, because Mars is aggression, it is like intensity, and then like Neptune is like this whole like soft whatever, you know, spoken kind of thing. And actually that reminds me of another funny story. I don't want to say exactly the studio, but I was on a yoga studio in one of the Hawaiian Islands because I don't want to identify it, but I was taking a yoga class with this it was a new yoga studio that just opened. I was like, oh, let me try this new one, because I, you know, wanted to support a new business. And so when I went in there, I was expecting like my normal, the woman who comes out and she has a soft voice and she's playing like beautiful music and chanting in the background, and this was not that. And the guy was kind of sort of yelling and like stepping on people, and he had this like thick New Jersey accent, and I just was like, I can't focus, like I don't understand what's happening right now, like why is he yelling at me? Like I'm in downward facing dog and he's like, you got that? Does that feel good? So I'm like, yes. So it was so intense, and I was just like, he's forcing, like, because I had always learned that yoga was something you eased into, and he's like, when he's doing adjustments, he's like adjusting you like aggressively, and it's just like, this was like boot camp yoga. And so I finished up that class and I never went back again because I was like, I cannot deal. And that's like kind of, it's like, I'm going to force you to do this easy, wonderful grounding thing, right? You know, so just the energies are so discombobulated, and like that's kind of how it might feel for some of you. So next up, we're going to talk about Mercury retrograde. Yes, so Mercury is retrograde 4 times this year. I talked about this in detail for my year ahead forecast, which I did on the weekend, but you can buy this forecast and then watch it, and I have all the slides and PDFs attached to it. So I'll definitely put a link in the video, and there's going to be a link on my website as well. If you go to www.thewildwahine.com/workshops, you'll be able to link up and see that, where I go into detail on all of the retrogrades and also like essentially everything for the year ahead. It's only $33.33, so it's a really good buy for you guys to have the heads up for what's coming. But I'll go into a little bit now. So this is going to be our first Mercury retrograde of the year. So the trend of what's happening with the Mercury retrogrades this year is that they're starting in air signs, or at least 3 of them are starting in air signs, and they're moving into earth signs. Our 4th one, which is kind of like a peekaboo retrograde, it's just starting a couple of days, like I think on the 29th of December, and then it's going into January. That's going to be happening, you know, at the end, and that's going to be in an earth sign. But these starting in air signs and then moving into earth signs. So the Mercury retrograde period is January 14th through February 4th. When Mercury is going to be retrograde in Aquarius, that's going to be the 14th through the 25th. And when Mercury is retrograde in Capricorn, that's going to be the 26th through the 4th. So just you can mark those down. So Mercury is essentially like our bridge, right? It's what bridges things together in terms of like having communication. It reminds me a lot of like when you have a website and you like want to post, but you want that app to like connect to another one, and you need like another app in the middle to kind of connect the two. And then if something happens with the link and the link is broken because that one's not connecting, then you just have discombobulation. It's not working. Everything kind of falls apart, and then you have to go in and fix it. And it's not like it's necessarily like a hard fix, you know, but you do have to like first problem solve and figure out what the problem is. It might take a little while to even do that, and that's frustrating and kind of annoying. And then you have to fix it, and that might take a little bit of time. You might have to order a part, or, you know, if it's something that has to do with your car, which is a very mercurial thing, or get another app or call them. You gotta wait online forever, because we all know how computer stuff is. We wait forever to talk to customer service, and then you talk to this person, they send you to this person, and it's just, that is Mercury retrograde, you know, for a lot of people. Now, Mercury is ruling, of course, our outings, our short-term visits, how we communicate, writing, it's our schedule, our everyday things, how we're buying and selling. So for business people, I always say, always look at the retrogrades, because this is very important, because this is you talking to your customers and you also selling to your customers. So this is deeply important. Tracking Mercury in general, if you're a business person, is just absolutely what we all do, because like where Mercury goes, so does the money, you know. And that's like also like just the archetype of Mercury is the archetypal like money bringer. A lot of people associate it with Venus. It's not Venus. Venus is kind of like once you already have the money, how you're enjoying yourself, you know, like how you're really like living it up with the luxury, but you had to like work and get it, or somehow get it, and how it comes to you through mercurial ways. so that is like that, like when you're looking to call in the money and to bring in the money, it's Mercury, it's not Venus. So we're traveling, short-term trips, as I mentioned before, errands, your tasks, organization, you know, the movement of information, and all of those types of things. So who's going to feel this particular transit? And I think I might do like a separate video, or I might do a Clubhouse, you know, talking a little bit more about this transit. The people who feel it are the people who are either have Gemini or Virgo as their ascendant, or they also have like planets in Gemini and Virgo, and especially if they're in the angular houses, which is the 1st, 4th, 7th, and the 10th house. So if that's where it is, or at least that's where it's starting, because remember, we have this retrograde happening in 2 signs. So it's going to affect actually both houses. So there's some information that you need from the 1st house that it's retrograding in, and then it goes back to the 2nd house, and it kind of sort of implements things. And so this, I think, is going to be kind of sort of the idea of the retrogrades for this year, where it's going to have this quality of like soaking the seeds, right? Some seeds, before you germinate them, they need to soak. They just need to soak and rehydrate themselves. And that's that quality, I think, when we first retrograde, that's what's happening. It's soaking, it's trying to figure things out, it's right, it's calling the customer service rep, it's trying to figure out what's going on, like what do we have here, what are we working with, how much is it going to cost me, you know, with my car and all that kind of stuff, you know, like that kind of thing. So it's soaking the seeds, and then the seeds are going to sprout. for this particular retrograde, while Mercury's in Aquarius, it's going to be squaring Uranus, and it's squaring Uranus from the 14th through the 20th. That's going to be important because I think whatever it is that's happening that you're rethinking, you know, that soaking of the seeds, like, how am I going to do this? What's going on? I don't know. When it squares Uranus, that might give you an opportunity for a breakthrough, like a new way of handling it, a new way of organizing yourself, a new way of doing what it is that you want to get done. It also could be just something that suddenly shocks you, that suddenly comes in and turns everything upside down, and then you're like forced to do it this way because you have no other option. You know, it snatches sometimes options off the table. It sometimes gives you the biggest option that you never thought was possible. That's just how Uranian transits are. Now, it is a square, so a lot of times it's a little bit more of a difficult one. So this one, it can be a little bit more discombobulating. But remember, Mercury is going to be retrograde in Saturn sign of Aquarius, Saturn sign of Capricorn. So there's still a constructive way that it's working. It's still kind of building something. And Aquarius is a fixed sign. So with that square to Uranus, it really is shaking things up in a way that doesn't want to be shaken up. But then once Mercury moves back into Capricorn, Capricorn is cardinal. So it likes to start something new. So as soon as it retrogrades back into the cardinal sign of Capricorn, it's like, okay, the sprout just sprouted from the seed and now you're ready to plant it, right? Planting it essentially in an earth sign. So once you're planting it in that earth sign, you're like, okay, I can start the new thing. Now that Capricorn area of your chart has already been lit up just because Venus is retrograding there. Venus hit Pluto there twice, came through. Mercury already came through. Mercury's coming back through again. Mars will be entering Capricorn and then coming through again. So that particular part of your chart is really like, right now. So know where Capricorn is. So much action is happening there and so much like new information and kind of like rebirthing things in that space. It's just getting, and it must be whatever it is, something that's like multi-layered because we've had to hit it with so many planets multiple times. So there's something in that area of our chart that we need to fix because if we didn't, we wouldn't be hitting it so much. And it's probably not very pleasant, especially if you have it in angular houses, but it is something that needs to be kind of like reworked so that you can move on to the next thing. So speaking of that area, that takes us to the last transit that we have for this week, and that is the Sun conjunct Pluto in Capricorn, and that's happening from the 13th through the 20th, but it will be perfecting on the 16th. So this is kind of the transit we're going to feel more deeply kind of towards the end of the week and into next week a little bit. So this particular transit really is about like the reset or the rebirth. Like I said before, we've had a lot of planets kind of sort of go through Pluto, and Pluto has this kind of like transformation through fire. You know, Plutonian things are underground things, they're volcanic things. Sometimes, especially when we've had a lot of these transits, especially when we've had like a lot of squares and oppositions to Pluto, we've seen that like just happen in the earth because Pluto is in Capricorn in an earth sign. So we've literally seen the earth shake with volcanoes and earthquakes and just other kinds of like nature-based activity that gets kicked up that causes like some sort of like large destructive event. So, you know, we have that, but we also have that kind of within us and what's going on. So we've had Venus connect or conjoin Pluto twice already. We have a third connection. We've had Mercury go through and conjunct Pluto, and then it moved on to Aquarius. It's actually going to come back and conjunct Pluto again, but that's happening in about like a week, I think next week. Then we're also eventually, like I said, going to have Mars come through there as well. But right now we have the Sun conjoining Pluto. So we started this week with the Sun making this sextile to Neptune, which kind of destabilized us and kind of put us in this imaginary space where we can escape, which is fun, but then we can escape and then not deal with what's in front of us. And then we have the Sun conjuncting Pluto saying, well, you're going to deal with it now. So we gave you the quiet, you know, the eye of the storm. So you're just like, you know what? I think the storm's over. I think everything's okay. And then like when the Sun conjuncts Pluto, it's like, nope, we're still in the middle of it. It's just a really big ass tornado, you know? And so there's some things that need to be reworked. Now this is kind of like a shorter transit. So it doesn't necessarily mean like it's massive things that are going to be transformed, but it is this Capricorn placement in your chart, and there's been a lot of things cooking up and transforming anyway. So it will be something that needs to be fixed, something that's broken, something that's not working, something that you need to hit with the sun or with solar energy, with yourself, with your ego, with how you show up, with your honesty, with your truthfulness, with your being, you know, and that's going to be what's important. And I think that's like the big takeaway with this. Sometimes it's difficult with Pluto transits because they can feel quite heavy, and when things transform, they don't necessarily always feel so good because you really are releasing something old. Sometimes Plutonian transits can signify like death, and we have like the sun conjunct Pluto, so death of solar figures. That's something that can happen as well. So there's a lot of things in terms of transformation and rebirthing that happens, but you know, typically speaking, that is kind of the nature of things, and that's how Pluto kind of rolls. It's just like, you know, death and decay brings new life, you know, and it's like this whole cyclical concept of life, that things have to end in order for them to begin again. And when it comes to like our lives, obviously it's not as applicable how we feel when we lose someone, but in terms of like, you know, what are some things that we're shedding, you know, like what are the dead skin cells that have to be sloughed off so that we can get to our skin, you know, and it can just breathe, and, you know, and all of that kind of sort of stuff. So there's been a lot of work in transformation and in getting rid of things in this particular place, and this is just another big energy that comes through with like your core being, like, and then might be calling out to you and asking you what you're going to do in terms of to fix some of the things with yourself specifically, and how you do things in terms of structure in your life, how you're structuring and how you're creating the life that you really want, which is an interesting, you know, transit to have here at the beginning of the year, where a lot of people like to think about like, okay, I'm going to do something new. So this is going to be supportive for that. Like, what is it that you just don't need, or that needs a lot of fixing? That also can play out in terms of power struggles too, because Pluto a lot of times represents like the government or those in power. It can be the government, but it can also be somebody in your life that holds power and that holds power over you, and how you're feeling about that. It also could be you usurping power and taking power, like exerting your power too in a lot of ways, and so just making sure that you're a benevolent power holder as you do that, I think is going to be important, and like, you know, be more in your favor. So that is what I have for this week. Hopefully you found it helpful and you were able to glean what you needed to know for this week. If you have any questions, make sure you leave them in the comments section, because I do read all of my comments and I do respond to them. So don't be afraid. Just seriously write down your comment. And just know that, like I said before, I do have my year ahead forecast. So if you want to know what's going on like way in advance, before I do these week to week astro forecasts, you want to know what's happening so you can plan in the future, make sure you go to that, and that link is going to be below. Subscribe to the channel if you enjoy this channel, and if you're looking at this on Instagram, just make sure you like it and share it or comment or whatever, you know, all that stuff. So thanks so much, and I will see you guys in the